Hello and welcome to Kismet and the Dark Yogi, brought to you by SourceMovement.com. We're here for people who want to be radically authentic and courageously vulnerable. So whether you're a yoga teacher building a tribe or an entrepreneur running a business, we're here to get your energy and mindset positioned for success. No more stress, no more lack of energy. Lead with full potential. Our intention is to leave the world a better place than we found it and inspire you to do the same. So let's have some fun.
Well, welcome everybody. And we're really excited for this call today. Going to talk about a huge topic, and I think something that gets convoluted in a lot of the teachings, and just it's confusing because there's a lot of subtle layers to it. And the topic for today is attachment.
Yikes.
So our teacher, Swami Parthasarathi, just came out with a new book not too long ago entitled The Holocaust of Attachment. It's really one of those things that destroys so many areas of our life so quickly and diminishes our peace and increases our stress and anxiety in ways that we just have no idea about. So the trouble with the whole concept is that it's easy to have it be misunderstood. And a lot of times to be being detached gets this idea of kind of like shutting it out or not being a part of it. And that's not actually it. What we do is we wind up putting up all these walls and creating all this isolation, and we wind up feeling disconnected. So being detached is not being disconnected per se. Being detached is being objective. So a really interesting way that he puts this in puts that concept in words is to say, that you're in it and you're out of it at the same time. So my first question, just as that is kind of a context for us to play with, my first question for you is like, what do you see as just in a broader way of some of the biggest areas that attachment shows up for you that is really disturbing to your peace of mind?
Great question. For me, I would say, and I was able to live this last week, obviously attachment comes with my daughter, Zoe. And I know some of you out there have children, you have partners, you have spouses, the whole thing. But for children, for our kids as they grow up, attachment is really, really difficult. And what I've noticed for Zoe is as she grows older, she becomes more independent. And it's phenomenal. And it's exactly my hope as I raised her. And again, back to Swami Ji's words, it was always like, parents want their children to be like they want them to be, but in fact, that's not the best way to raise them. Like, we want our children to be an independent, energetic being and to really fulfill their soul's purpose. So I had to check myself a lot. I flew over to Dubai and Abu Dhabi to visit her, and just noticing and feeling her ability to be detached from me, which is what allows her to do what she wants to do and to live on the other side of the planet. And I really had to stay in the flow or the alliance of watching every thought and every word so that I wouldn't, as I call it, pull a little hook to rein her back in. So for me, it was about observing my attachment to her, my sadness of her growing up and saying, hey, I'm going to go to Qatar over the summer and work for Al Jazeera instead of rushing back to California to see my mother, and making sure that how I conversed with her and how I treated her was to honor her soul's purpose and not to say or do something that would hook her back to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the hook.
The hook.
Right?
The
and
emotional
it's like
hook.
We have that, I think we see it in a lot of different relationships too, is where it's like that vying for attention almost kind of thing where, don't forget about me.
Yeah, I think it's the safety. I think it's wanting, and we'll see it in our yoga classes. I mean, I can circle this back around to our yoga classes. We want our students to be happy and to approve on a very deep level, I think all teachers want this. We want their approval. We want them to feel like, wow, that was a great class. So if we're doing something to grow in our lives or in our teaching or whatever, and other people around us might become uncomfortable because it's not the norm, our immediate response could be, I'm not saying it always is, but it could be to go back to that which is comfortable, right? So just to give an example, if some of us are working on teaching a few new poses or leveling up our themes, like really going for theme in class, and we notice that the students might be like, well, this is different, our go-to place could be to revert right back to how we've always taught. And a great example of this is the Tiger Woods story. If anybody plays golf, I remember years ago, and this is after his big, he was doing really well before some of the drama and the trauma that comes along with being a star sometimes. But he talked about changing his swing. And he knew he had to do it because he got the swing once. Like he nailed it. He got the sweet spot and he knew it was there. So he and his coach would just practice time and time and time again. And it became very uncomfortable because there was a point in time of his playing that he didn't do really well, but he knew it was possible. So I don't know if that helps, but I always go to that example.
Yeah. Well, I think it brings up there's so much here. Mm-hmm. Like we could go any which way with it. Mm-hmm. For now, let's stick in the realm of relationships.
Okay.
So it sounds like, and I'm just curious, like what your experience has been of this, of like how the more that you've watched yourself with that, the more that you've really tried to avoid sinking in a hook, mm-hmm. Or just remaining less attached. Like how has that affected your relationship? Let's start with Zoe. Like how is it reflected in there?
Well, it's definitely better because when I don't go for throwing the hook, it means that not only is she more supported by myself too, I just use this phrase to be in her soul's purpose or her mission, but it also positions me to continue to work on being in my soul's purpose. Because if I were to really, and one of the words you left out when you talked about attachment is suffering. Mm. Attachment causes so much suffering. So if I'm wallowing in my attachment to her, I will be suffering, which means I will not be thinking positively. I won't be taking action as I should. I won't be present to the present moment. And the only way around that for me to not suffer is to really look at every thought and every action and making sure that I'm making decisions towards my divine right purpose. Mm. So if I do that and I encourage her to do that, the relationship can't help but be healthier. It might not look the same or feel the same of that I've got to be with you or I've got to get Zoe home or she's got to be with me. But that's not necessarily the healthiest relationship.
It's interesting. I was just listening to a lecture by Alan Watts today, and he was talking exactly about this. What he was really talking about was the system of education and the style of educating and parenting that really sets kids up to fail and to be dependent. Right. And what you're really talking about, to what I'm hearing anyway, is really creating that independence and seeing your own practice, your own growth as an integral part of her growth, but not from the sense of you're teaching her, more of the sense of you're just showing her and allowing her the space to have her own journey. That must be really hard when you have a kid. I don't have a kid of my own. Zoe's the closest thing for me, and I love her like a daughter, but I don't, it's different for me.
Well, it comes back to the teaching lead by example. That's the best we can do. The only person we can truly, truly take care of is ourselves. And if we do that, we then are a very beautiful example for the people around us.
Yeah, I think that's, it makes life a lot easier. Anyway.
It makes life a lot easier. It diminishes drama and trauma, right? So the other sidebar note to attachment is a lot of drama, and which creates a lot of suffering. And you'll notice it even if we're talking about relationships with our students or our spouses or whatever, that attachment just as reverting and sort of boomeranging the attention back to ourselves. And it creates suffering.
Right. And in any relationship, it's interesting because if we go a level deeper with it, we look at it more on the energetic level, if we're going to get a little sci-fi about it or whatever. When you look at it on that level, it creates, one, it's two ways. Like there's a cord of attachment that goes both ways.
Right.
So like the dog on a leash, you might be holding the leash, but you're on the other end of that leash. And so what I see on an energetic level is like how it sets up those holding patterns. It's like a stuck pattern.
Yeah.
Where, then either person has a lot less room to maneuver because all of a sudden there's this incredible, all of these boundary conditions put on the relationship of you can behave this way and you can do this and this and this, but you can't do this and this and this. And then it's like, well, when do I get to really be me? And I'm not saying like go out and, have a bunch of partners or whatever, but what I am saying is that when a person's not allowed to follow their own journey, especially in the context of parenting, I think it causes a lot of stuck energy and a lot of things that people wind up cleaning up for the rest of their lives.
Totally. And then the other piece that we're talking about is obviously very heavy attachment when it's to a family member. But if we're not in tune with that, then we can be guaranteed that attachment is showing up elsewhere in our lives in many, many, many different levels. And so also the beauty of acknowledging the attachment, being able to take care of ourselves, lead by example, honoring the other individual's identity and sole purpose means that we will have a clearer perspective of attachment elsewhere in our life. We'll just see it so much clearer because it won't be quite as strong as that emotional bond, but we'll see it. And attachment can be insidious when it's at many different levels. It doesn't have to be with our children or our partner or our spouse. It can be to, as I mentioned, our yoga classes. It can be attached to, I need to look a certain way. I need to talk a certain way.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up because that was the next thing I kind of wanted to look at is some of the different areas that this shows up, right? So one that I see a lot, especially in, our process of building a business, something really new, for us, is being attached to the way I think it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I have all these ideas about, and casting a vision is extremely important. Like, don't get me wrong, you have to point the ship in a direction.
Right.
But at the end of the day, when you finally sail out to where you think you're going, one, you never know how you're going to get there. Like if you're sailing a ship and the wind is going in a different direction, like you're going to have to tack.
Right.
Back and forth until you get where you're going. So the direction you can't, the path there is, who knows? And at the end of the day, when you get there, you're going to have a totally different vantage point. And what I've found, and I'd love for you to just share a little bit about your experience with this, of like when we get attached to the way that I think it's supposed to be, not only is it a lot more frustrating, but it really seems to slow things down.
Exactly. And it's not nearly as fun. So life is it's a series of experiences. All right. This is the basic Vedanta definition. Life is a series of experiences. The quality of our experiences will determine the quality of our life. So if we are attached to certain things having to go a certain way, it means that we become more rigid. We're not really in the flow. And when it doesn't go that way, we get frustrated and we suffer. Where if we can hold the space for it's just going to happen in this way, I'm going to do what I need to do. So it's not about not taking action, but do what we need to do, but be open to the possibilities that it might just look a whole lot different than we ever thought. And if we can embrace that and be open to it, it's actually really exciting.
Yeah, I found that too. It's like it's just way more creative.
Yeah.
Right. And you see all kinds of possibilities that you just would have never imagined.
Exactly.
There's a sparkle. There's definitely more of a sparkle to it. I think in the context of teaching a yoga class, like that was one of the biggest things is like I had all these ideas about how I thought a yoga class was supposed to be. Like I thought you were supposed to teach a pose in a certain way. And if you didn't cover all these different aspects of teaching the pose that, and all these particulars about it that you weren't really teaching the pose.
Right.
Like you weren't teaching the pose. You weren't doing it right. Love that. Not doing it right. And then all of a sudden it's like not yoga. And it really begs the question of like, well, what is yoga? Like, what's the right way?
Mm-hmm.
There's no right way.
There's many different ways.
There's all kinds of ways.
Well, and interesting, too, when we're attached to having to teach a pose or a flow or a class in a certain way, we end up teaching it that way all the time. And before you know it, like, our students aren't hearing a word we say.
Right.
Because it's just the same old thing. So, again, what would it look like if we approached a class in a completely different way? If we weren't attached to it having to look, feel, and sound a certain way, but we were really making every decision to the divine right and having it flow harmoniously, it would be pretty cool.
Right. And, I mean, what that helped me do anyway was really just get out of my own way.
Yes.
You know, as soon as I stopped trying to make it a certain way, then all of a sudden my classes became more creative, more fun for me to teach. I was not drained after teaching doubles. I was, energized.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. And just having a lot more fun. And it was way more relevant because you're in the moment and you're in the flow. But it really, everything that was in the way of that was my attachment to the way that I thought it needed to be. And there is such a huge let go. And I think that's it's an interesting area where faith, and you can use faith to detach in a healthy way.
Totally.
It's a sense of trust of, it's cool. I'm exactly where I need to be, and this is just, it's going to unfold the way that it needs to unfold.
Love it.
So, the last thing I wanted to, I mean, there's like I said, there's so many areas that we could go into, but what about when you think you're supposed to be somewhere else? Can you talk a little bit about how attachment plays a role in that?
Can you give an example?
Yeah, well, I've been working at this for this long, and I just thought I'd be further along with it.
Okay, it's not physically someplace else.
And it could be with a pose.
It could be.
Yeah, like maybe it's the crow pose, that somebody's been working on, or the handstand. Everybody loves their handstands. We've been working on a handstand for a year now, and I just thought I'd have it down by now. And it's like, then you get disappointed.
Well, here's the funny thing with that, especially with yoga. So let's just go back to what yoga really is. It's that alignment, rejoining of our original self. And if, to get in the absolute, our original self is the self that is always unconditional love, energy, focus, a self-realized soul for all intents and purposes. So we can only imagine a self-realized soul, what dynamic of happiness and joy that is. So that's what yoga really is. When we cover that with, I should be somewhere else, we're fracturing that energy. So again, there creates some drama and trauma because whenever we think we should be something else than what we are, we're not in the flow. And there's a denial of our own acceptance. Now, for sure, we can have aspirations. I want to get this handstand. I mean, Nick knows I created a 20-minute yoga practice that I do every single day because we got so busy. It was hard for me to get to studio classes. And there were things I wanted to work on. I wanted to work on going upside down. I wanted to work on my back bends and my core. So I wouldn't recommend this practice to anybody, but I made a decision. This is what I'm going to do. And sure enough, after a month, things are so much easier. But I set out with, this is just what I'm going to do. And it was so much easier to practice without having to be like, I got to get this. It was more of like, well, I'm going to work these muscles in my body because they'll help me do this. My spine, I'm over the computer so much, so I need to make sure I get 3 back bends in no matter how my body's feeling that morning. Rather than I'm a bad yogi because I can't go up into a wheel as easily as I'd like.
Really, what was the biggest shift for you for that? Mentally, when was the moment when you were just like, you know what, screw this. I'm going to try this differently.
That's a really good question. I think I just listened to the guide of whatever that was. It's like, well, what do I need to do to feel like my body is getting what it needs in terms of the yoga practice? There were certain standing poses There were certain inversions, there was certain core work, and there were certain back bends. Mm. So it was kind of a let go. It's like, all right, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a system. It was just like, here's my little system.
Okay, cool. And then you kind of look at it like the power of choices in there. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's a really big piece, because this plays a huge role in karma yoga. Karma yoga is an active participation. Like, it is deciding what you're going to do and, what the actual goal is. Mm-hmm. You have to have a goal for karma yoga. And at the end of the day, how do you practice? But the other component is not being attached to the outcome.
Exactly. You can't be. It's throwing up the ideal. There it is, because we have to have that vision in order to start creating. It's like, all right, there's the vision, and then not being attached. And that is a tricky, fine line.
Yeah, that's always a sticky one. Mm-hmm. 'Cause like, how hard do you drive to get the outcome? Mm-hmm. But it really comes back to the internal.
It's always the internal. So right? if my drive was, hey, I really want to rock this forearm balance, and if I didn't get it, I felt horrible about myself, that's not yoga. That's like beating myself up.
It's the internal hit.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the internal, like anything, sin is in the reaction, judgment versus discernment. So we're constantly discerning and assessing. But the moment we judge ourselves, we're attached to thinking we should be something that we're not.
Right. I'm so glad you said that, because that was the piece I was trying to I just was trying to figure out how to articulate. But that's the opposite side of that, is where the sattvic mimics the tamasic.
Yes.
Where a person who claims to be detached from the outcome and then just refuses to take action.
Right.
So it's like, oh, I got it. Like, right. It's all like, I'm not attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's sort of more of like a screw it kind of attitude. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that is the intention of karma yoga. It has a very strong drive and focus behind it, mm-hmm. but it also has the devotional quality of not being attached to how it's going to turn out.
We have to take actions. If we don't take actions as human beings, we die.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
why all of this is such a fascinating dance. Really fascinating. Should we maybe take a few questions?
Yeah, we'll come back.
Kind of
is that too much?
That was a lot.
Too much? Too much.
No.
Okay.
So I got to take a few moments tonight to just kind of sit back and witness my own attachment to my own personal outcome where I think I should be. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty beautiful, because I got to take a few moments to myself and watch an awesome squirrel on the telephone line out in Detroit.
I love it. Black squirrel.
And, I'm a really, one of my hobbies is Native American medicine cards, and this the spirit of animals. And so I took a moment to just look at this squirrel and go to my book, and instead of reading the whole chapter on squirrels, there was this one quote, and it said, "Squirrel, you've gathered nuts by the score, exactly predicting if you'll need more. Teach me to take no more than I need, trusting great mystery to harvest the seed." So it was in that moment after reading that, and it's all I really needed, was just to say, okay, you're exactly where you need to be, and all of this feeling of where you need to be or where you should be doesn't matter. All results matter, and you're exactly where you need to be. So just get back in the flow. It was pretty simple, but pretty powerful for me.
Well, those simple teachings are usually the most powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said it right there. It was that was a really important piece is I can't remember your exact word, but it was all results matter. Yeah, that was it. All results matter. And that's totally everything you're doing is creating a result, and they all matter. The ones that are not getting you what you want matter just as much, because they're showing you, that's not working. Do something different,
Yeah.
But we get so disappointed and we take it so personally, and it really starts that's the attachment to, I need it to be this way.
Right. Well, and it's also such a great tool to get back to everything's the law of cause and effect. Everything is cause and effect. And the challenge, and again, this is attachment, is usually many of us want to judge, that was a bad effect from whatever the cause. This is a bad result. what if none of it was bad or good, it just was? And what if we could look at it so objectively without the attachment that we could be like, oh, okay, here's the effect. So next time around, I'm going to tweak this, the cause a little bit so the effect's different. And we were just completely objective and detached in that way, but very focused. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Just keep moving. Just keep staying in action.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee that most of you out there, and Jen included, are not celebrating enough. So this can get tricky too, because we're talking about attachment, but I really want everyone to look at what you've done and created and go, wow, this is awesome. I've done a great job, because we tend to gloss over what we've done well and just kind of look at where we think we should be.
Right.
We got to celebrate the good stuff.
We do. It's easy to minimize things.
Yes.
But things that even maybe are not a big deal to me in my head are a big deal to someone else. Mm-hmm. And it's all those little tiny shifts that just keep happening.
Right.
That keep reaffirming you on your path, I guess.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
thank you. Thank you for that share.
Thank you guys for talking about this. Awesome conversation. Thanks.
That kind of brought up another thing for me, is how if we're carrying that around with us, take for example, your idea of I'm supposed to be somewhere else. Think about what you're going to project onto your yoga students.
Oh yeah, it's not good. It's very difficult, because you'll hear us talk about energy. Energetically, if we are displaying a frequency or a vibration, whatever the language is, of, gee, I should be something other than what I am, or I should be someplace else in my practice or my teaching, your students will feel that. They won't know exactly, but they will feel it, and it will come off in their lives of either, well, something's amiss with my teacher, or I should be doing something else. I should be elsewhere. So we have to be, and we just received a teaching too, look, yoga is a spiritual practice. It's a spiritual industry, quote unquote. So we have to finely tune what we're doing, because we won't get away with as much as people that are, say, not in a spiritual world.
Right.
Okay.
A little less leeway.
So what I'm trying to say is, it's going to reveal itself on us stronger than it would somebody who's a CPA and has no yoga practice.
Right. Well, it's as soon as you walk into your class and you're like, oh, there should be, 20 people here instead of 10.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't care if you say the words or not, those people are going to feel that.
Right.
And basically what it does is it just casts a huge cloud and flings a bunch of poo all over the people who showed up.
Right. It does.
Right? It really does.
Mm-hmm. And any questions about how, if you're attached to thinking your students should be a certain way, or your teaching should be a certain way, or whatever, just please bring it up, because it helps everybody.
Yeah, where are you holding on to an idea so firmly that it's closing you off to other things? Remember, that was something that we learned at the One World Academy.
Oh, that's true.
They talked about the rigidity of thinking.
Yes.
And that's not how we were designed. We were designed to be much more fluid and responsive. We are designed as creators.
That's right.
And what do you create when you have rigid thinking? Well, you just continue to create the same and the same and the same.
Yes.
It lacks expansion and growth. It becomes a very linear process. And that's not the design.
Not of a human.
Not of a human.
That's a good point.
It's very interesting. So would love to hear your thoughts.
Going to the attachment, it just brought me to the reality that I am totally attached to the outcome, especially with my children. I'm always asking myself, how can I be and show the best part of me to them? How can I be the best me to them, especially to my two boys that both have issues. One disabled physically, and the other one has other big issues with drugs and all that. So how can I, as the mother, be the strong role model to them? And so I'm attached to expecting. I don't know if that has to do with attachment, but I think I am attached to expecting them to learn a little bit from me without me being always in the mom mode. I don't want to speak to them like the mom, scolding the child. I want to try to speak to them now from the level of a mom that has learned some lessons through these ordeals, right. And that, is giving them, here I am. Let's place everything over the table and let's talk about it. And how can I help you? So every day, like my Marine son does not believe in what I'm doing. He says this is mumbo jumbo because he's a Marine. So I'm not really being accepted, or I'm not being applauded by what I'm doing to him. He doesn't even want me to talk about yoga in front of him or anything that I've been accomplishing. And then when I confront my students and I sit with older people, younger people, I feel that I am so vulnerable to them, and I reach them, and I feel so good. I feel so at ease spiritually when I'm able to lend my heart or my hands or my shoulder to somebody that needs it, and yet I come to my home and I don't receive the same response. So I ask myself today, waiting for this call, I'm like, wow. I feel like I don't know where I'm supposed to be. Today I've had that conversation,
You're supposed to be right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the perfect place for you to be. So here's a couple things, and ultimately the core of what I'm hearing here is that it's an attachment to what people are going to think.
Yes.
So on and this is a pendulum that swings both ways, or another way to put that would be a double-edged sword, in that. And this is what it is ultimately is a recipe to get carried away in any which way. So people applaud you and like the way that you make them feel, and you're happy. And then somebody doesn't acknowledge it, and you're sad. So take out all of the kind of details of it, right? Of the circumstances of one being, your son, and other being, and his being a Marine, and all the reasons and all that stuff. And then all the other yoga people being so happy and feeling so, and take out all of that, and basically what you have is flip sides of a coin.
Yeah.
And there's a quality in the Gita that he talks about that it's a quality of a jnani. It is indifferent to censure or praise. And so the question for you, a lot of times with these, it's like, well, then we want to know, like, how do I fix it? Like, how do I fix it? It's a practice. And the question that I would ask to you, just to really play with and work around, is what would it be like if I weren't attached to them liking me or not liking me, or thinking what I do is important or not thinking what I do is important? What would be possible in my life?
Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
It's hard, right?
Does.
It's really
very
tricky.
Hard. It's very hard because they are not, it's like we are codependent on each other. I live with them. They live with me. I go to my beautiful spiritual realm of my yoga studio or whatever, and then I come back to the home where it's not, the same conversation.
Yeah. Okay. So part of what comes up for me too for this is we don't always, in fact, rarely do we need to talk about yoga with our family members or people close to us. We simply need to live it. And living it doesn't mean that everything's sugar-coated. So as you get through more of the program or in the full potential self exercises, you'll begin to realize that you can speak from your full potential self to your son's full potential self. And in that space, and this is for all of us, we never say anything wrong. It doesn't mean that it's always sweet and cheery, but you're just coming from an objective place, which is your full potential self. So as your sons live with you, and it's okay to expect a certain behavior, especially if the one that's struggling with some drugs and addiction, to really want to encourage a legal behavior and respect, but you just live and be the person that can lead by example. And it does require releasing the attachment of what they think, because part of us will always try to be maneuvering back and forth because we want everybody to be happy, right? So we kind of want to do something so they're happier. But just the best way to get here is be present to the present moment and know that every time, and this is for all of us, every time we have a thought, we're starting to create a template of manifestation, because every thought has also an effect. So just look at your thoughts moment to moment and really try and stay present to the present. And they'll start to notice a shift. They might not say anything, but they'll notice.
Right. Because not only is it an attachment to what people think, but there's also an attachment to the way that others should be.
Right.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, definitely, yes.
So it's all over the place. And what you're describing is extreme. Like, I don't want you to feel like you're the odd person out or anything like that.
All.
Like, everybody has this.
Yeah.
We all do this. And then to hold on to it, then we decide, you know, that we need to be right about it. And so the need to be right, coupled with the attachment of the way that we think a person is supposed to be, or the way that we think that they're supposed to think about us or treat us or whatever, ultimately winds up creating this knotted up holding pattern of energy, where then we hold so tightly onto that to make ourselves right, that they're going to behave a certain way, which is the way that we don't want them to behave. So it becomes a real mess. So what you can do is simply take the step back and just watch it unfold. Like, step back out of your emotion and into the intellect and just really examine, like, wow, I wonder how I'm wanting this person to be different. There's no judgment. Yeah. It's not right or wrong. It's just a matter of, like, hey, do I want to have more peace in my life? That's an active choice that you get to make.
There's a big release, everyone, when we get out of this is good and this is bad, or this is right and this is wrong. If we just look at it like, all right, this is an interesting energy. This is an interesting effect from a cause that we might not even see, and just observe it and constantly stay in alignment with our soul's purpose and making decisions that are to the divine right order. That's all we can do. And love and cherish the people in our family and in our lives, of course, but also letting them unfold their cause and effect. And it's difficult, especially like, you know, what you've shared. I'm hoping in the future, what I want to have, Maria's got an amazing story, and I want in a future call to do more of an interview with you to share it, and we'll get to that place. But it is difficult. But that's where having the faith and doing what we do really comes into play.
Right. Thanks for that share. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, attachment is the definition of codependency. You know?
Totally.
You know, part of my job now, I have a more lead role where I work at, for anyone who doesn't know, I work at a drug and alcohol rehab center. And now I have a role in the morning, like every morning that I work, which is 5 days a week. I lead with the meditation. So I have to do a guided meditation with all the patients who want to do a guided meditation in the morning. And, you know, then I have to do lectures all day, which are supposed to stimulate them and inspire them. And so I can so easily, especially, Donna, you and Nick both know me, I can so easily get attached to what am I going to say that's going to make me be inspiring to them.
Yeah.
Where now I've gotten to a place where it's like, I let them know how much they inspire me. So there's not an attachment to what they think of me, but it's important I let them know what I think of them.
That's great.
And just like the meditation in the morning, like when I first started doing this a couple of weeks ago was, you know, what am I going to say? What reading am I going to use? And will it be okay for those who don't want to believe in a God, or for those who do believe in a God but not what I believe? And I find that if I sit in the morning quietly before I get to work, without any expectations of what they're going to think, but just what works for me, because it's coming from me and it calms me, I notice it calms them too.
Oh, that's great.
It's not to calm them. It's an attachment. Well, I guess it's still an attachment. But, there's good days and bad days.
Right,
still
totally.
Days to attach. Absolutely. I want to always put that out there that, just like my yoga classes, these people, some of them are forced to go, 30 at a time. Some have to volunteer to go.
Right.
And if I get to attach, this last Sunday I had a class with all these guys, and they walked in, and they've never done yoga, and everything was part jokes and little noises they were making throughout the classroom. And I had to kind of to make it a safe place.
Yeah.
I couldn't come from a place where I was going to control them, but I had to come from a place of, we have to provide this space for everyone here. And if I can't provide that space, then maybe this isn't the place for you. Wow, what a difference in the room. The jokes went away. Everyone got serious about yoga. And at the end of the class, even the loudest people had an amazing experience. Only because I didn't get attached to trying to control them or get them to behave a certain way, but just came from a place that we have to provide a space for everyone here.
Right. You directed them. What you did was a really beautiful thing. And this is really applicable to anybody in a class, especially when things go a little funny, is you just redirected everybody towards the highest.
Right.
Right. And, there's nothing that's not sacred about fart jokes. If the attention is directed inward, which it wasn't, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's you can have that and have fun and laugh and still have a yoga experience when the gaze is being turned inward.
Right. And I love it. You're demonstrating that element of when we direct ourselves to the highest, then we're holding a space for everybody else to do it. So it's not controlling them, but controlling ourselves, directing ourselves. It's really great.
Yeah. Yeah, really powerful. Good for you.
I actually find that I get the most control out of anybody by just letting go.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's like the class.
Weird. It seems opposite, but it really works.
Well, what we chase runs from us. Yeah. Isn't that the classic teaching?
Yeah. And all it is another form of attachment.
Yeah.
It's that control comes in because we're attached to having it be a certain way.
Yeah.
And then we break things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For yoga teachers, what's the number one thing that they can do right away to just start being less attached to the way that they think their classes are supposed to be?
Be themselves.
But what if people don't like them?
Then they won't go to your class, and that's okay. This really is, whether you're a yoga teacher or you own a studio or whatever, if someone doesn't resonate with your class, guide them to a class they will resonate with. And trust me, just by that objectivity, interestingly enough, more people will be attracted to your classes. That's the funny thing. It's like what we were just saying, what we chase just keeps running. Be yourself, but be really not the over the top. Okay, I'm going to be myself, so I'm going to be really relaxed or like I would if I'm out with friends. You're still leading, right? So you're still a leader. You're holding the space, but don't try and be anybody else. You can emulate things from people. One of the best things to do is as you go to different classes and you see things that a teacher's doing that you really like, emulate it in your own way, but make it your own. So you're not being this other weird person. You're being you, but you've learned from somebody.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like musicians,
Totally.
As a musician, I listen to trumpet players, and I know you listen to flute players endlessly. And it was through emulating some of those teachers those players that I found my own sound.
Right.
But
exactly.
It wasn't to try and be them or play them. It was trying to understand what's the mindset and the quality of sound of a really great trumpet player so that I can find that in myself.
Exactly.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a good one.
Well, there's one more thing I want to bring up. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
This is going to get a little bit, well, I'm just going to go for it.
Jason's going to drop a bomb, everybody.
It's a little
Get
bit
ready.
of a bomb.
Get ready.
And what it is we are of service. We're in a spiritual line of living and a spiritual industry. I know that sounds weird to put those two words together, but yoga is a spiritual, higher consciousness industry. And we're walking in and teaching and serving students. What we need to really check is that we're not so attached to having to serve a certain way or be this spiritual entity. We have to have our own spirituality for ourselves, for our own soul's purpose, not to posture it for our class. And it's a big let go when we realize that, yes, we set up the system to be a really good yoga teacher, but at the end of the day, it's still part of our journey of lifting ourselves up and leading by example, and then letting the students flow and follow in their life and in their classes as they should.
Well, it sounds like the way that I'm hearing that is that there is a tendency, I think, on the more subtle layers of that same attachment, right? It's just on another subtle layer of wanting it to be a certain way. Mm-hmm. And so then we try to grab hold and manipulate and control things. Mm-hmm. And what I hear you saying is that actually when we really just make it all about our own practice,
right.
Embodying the divinity that's already there within you and getting all those little splinters put back in place and the fragments all put back together so that we can be whole. Mm-hmm. And then let go is counting on the divine plan of nature to just bring everything together.
Right.
You will naturally have the people around you that need to be around you.
Exactly.
Right? Unless you're making choices, right? And when you make those choices of separation to be around people who are not, vibrating at the same, in the same way, then that's when we create the fragmentation.
Exactly.
So it's really a let go of any kind of control and just trust that your practice is guiding you home. And the more that happens, the more everything they say, those saying is the universe conspires to support that.
Right.
Right?
Totally.
And I don't know that the universe is conspiring as much as it is the natural.
It's the law of cause and effect.
Exactly. It's the natural law of nature that takes over and surrendering to that.
Yes. And let me just give you an example, like, what does that look like? Say you're walking in to teach at a new place, or maybe you're not even teaching yoga, but you're starting a new job or a new relationship, and there's this element of such uncomfortability, like it's really awkward and there's some fear coming up, or maybe guilt, shame, all those emotions that rise up within us. Rather than trying to circumvent those emotions and create something that is more external, just go within and look at it and be like, wow, this is really amazing. Like, I'm having this fear, and you might even be able to trace it back, and it's coming up, and then transform that. Because as we go through our experiences, and especially in being service like this, things are going to come up for us. So that's why they say, teaching is the ultimate teacher for us. So look at it, examine it, be insightful, be aware, and do your best to transform and just keep climbing up the ladder of spirituality without the attachment.
Right. Like the stuff coming up, we get attached. I think that's another way that we get attached is the comfort of that stuff not coming up.
Right.
Totally. Right. And I was like, oh man, my life is so much less peaceful, quote unquote peaceful. But at the end of the day, welcome that, because that's the process we're working.
That's the growth.
That's when it starts to happen. When you start to get scared by a goal or show up somewhere and it triggers all that stuff, and you wow, what an amazing light show. How cool is that? Because there's all your stuff that you get to deal with, and you can choose to deal with it in the here and now and resolve it permanently. Or you can choose to stuff it down and just have it come back in another way. Right.
It will. It's like how many people have dated the same person 5 times just with a different face. It's hilarious. But it kind of looks, and And this in some ways bums me out because I'm always looking for ease flow. So as we grow, like, yes, things are more in the ease and flow, especially when we release attachment, when we stay in alignment energetically, when we understand the law of cause and effect. However, as we elevate our spiritual practice, you better believe that the universe or this world is going to give us some resistance. So in some ways, things will be much easier. In other ways, it's like we'll get punched in the face. And that's just one of those times where you're like, okay, this is fascinating. And look at it, transform it, transmute it, whatever, and keep moving forward. But try not to let it shake your world or have that attachment. It's like, wait a minute, I'm doing so good. Why all of a sudden is there this thing in my life? The things in your life, because every problem is driven by its unfolding solution, and there's an amazing opportunity to learn from it.
Yeah, it's not like there's anything new. It's not like it wasn't there. It's just showing up now.
Yeah.
Right? It's showing up in a different way and always giving us the opportunity. And we were at a mastermind event, which is, kind of like a community of business owners, getting together and helping each other out, essentially. And at that event, we had a guy come speak for an hour, and his name is Kevin Nations. And if you look him up, Kevin Nations has an amazing business and really quite an incredible thinker. A lot of people claim to be thought leaders. I would put him in the category of a true thought leader.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he said was, this is as easy as it's going to get, and that's good.
Yeah.
Like, if you're doing it right, things aren't going to get easier for you. That doesn't mean they have to come to a grinding halt because they get so hard. It just means that your capacity to handle more and move faster and have a bigger impact and carry more energy with you gets greater.
Yeah.
So this is as easy as it's going to get, everybody.
Right.
And love it.
And love it. And it reminds me, again, taking it back to musician analogy, there used to be this thing when I was in music school, the teachers would say, oh, here's this little lick, this phrase. You want to play it so it even though it's hard, it sounds easy, right? Did you ever hear that one, Nick?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Okay, well, here's the kicker. Then I had, Richard Woodhams. He was principal oboe of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and we were all scared of him. If anybody's seen that movie Whiplash, he was the Whiplash guy. Like, he was the scariest guy. But
did you see that movie?
Yeah, I saw it on the airplane.
Oh, no.
But he's great. Like, he's such a phenomenal musician. He was a little bit nutty, so we were all a little scared of him. But he had the best teaching. He's like, this is how it is. You make the lick sound like it's hard, but easy for you.
How do you do that?
Well, it's the ninja trick. So you play it so everybody knows, like, yeah, this is a really freaking hard lick, but it's easy for me. So as our lives, as we keep up-leveling, our work as yogis, it's like, yeah, it is hard, but it's easy for us because we're in the flow. Even though we know there's going to be times where it's tricky. But just know that your practice will guide you and protect you. And I'll kind of leave you with this teaching is, when we have these moments where we decide to step into fear, it means that we're denying that we are taken care of. We are, as these amazing energetic beings, we are taken care of. But we've been conditioned in this world to step into places of fear, like we're not going to have enough, we're not going to be enough, we're not going to be protected, we're going to get sick, we're going to get hurt. And fear is a very, very powerful emotion, and that's very possible what we will attract. So just holding our space of, I am protected and I am this divine being and I have the ability and the guidance to deal what comes my way. That's being in the flow.
I am perfectly placed.
You're
always.
Perfectly placed.
Yeah. The piece that I would leave everybody with is just to remember that the spiritual path is not the easiest path.
Yeah.
Right? It's one of the hardest. The people who think it's easy are usually spiritual escapists.
Right.
Who are just going off.
That's a whole other call.
Into bliss bunny land. Yeah, it's a whole other call to feel better. Right? But the true spiritual path is one of the most challenging paths, if not the most challenging path, because we have to come face to face with everything that we think we are and then watch it dissolve.
Yeah.
And that's scary. So as we become less and less attached in all these different ways, things are going to start to move and shift. And that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. And if we really just remember that all we're doing is building our capacity along the way and gradually peeling away the layers, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Because everything's already okay.
It's already okay.
So that's what I would leave everybody with.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
For the longest time, first and foremost, and I still hold the role, you know, it's important to me, and I hold it with a reverence because I know it's an honor to be a mom of 4 boys.
Yeah.
But that's not my only identity.
Yeah.
And as time has gone on, and especially, you know, with each boy leaving the house and doing their thing, and like you said, you know, I'm having to let go of my Jack is your Zoe, who it seems to me, and the other boys will point it out often, saying, well, he just doesn't seem to think that family's as important as it should be because he's not going on this family vacation with us because he has a deadline at work, you know,
yeah.
Stuff like that. And so it's like, well, you know what, everybody, you gotta live your life with how whatever you, like you were saying, your soul's purpose. You've gotta bring your energy out and deliver it to where, and sometimes it's guided in the right direction and sometimes it's misguided, but you know what, that's your own place to figure out and nobody else's place to judge. But I'm finding now, as each boy has left the roost, it is now I'm seeing me as me, and it's like, okay, what do I have to offer the world that I haven't been opening myself up to because I've been so immersed in this role?
That's the best question ever. I'm so glad that you're asking that question.
I love it.
I can't imagine what's going to unfold.
I know.
It's
going to be an exciting year.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. Like, welcome, like, good morning, you know?
Well, that's cool, everyone. We've all got something to share, like really, really spectacular ourselves with the world. And just like, I'll just always bring it back to, if every decision we make is in alignment with our divine right purpose, it's going to be okay.
Exactly where we need to be.
Exactly where we need to be.
It's a beautiful teaching.
Yeah.
Like, if we could just remember that, like, really, everything would be okay. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for showing up with your great questions, your really amazing shares, and really just for being who you are. Yeah. Like, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this wild ride. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but Source Movement's gaining some new momentum. As simple as your question may seem to you, it's never as simple as it seems.
Right.
So bring it on. Yeah. We're ready. We love hearing from you. So stay active. And just so much love to all of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
A really heartfelt namaste.
Namaste, everyone.